Hey, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on a Sunday morning. If you happen to be in Pasadena, I know that the conference is also wrapping up right about now. So I really appreciate you being here with us. This is the panel called What is Your Why? And it's on time management and figuring out how we define our own definition, how we make our own definitions of success. I'll be moderating. My name is Elisa A. Bonin. My pronouns are she, her. And a quick visual description. I'm a Filipino and white woman mixed, sitting in a featureless white void that is my undecorated office and greeting you from Munich, Germany. Um, I'm a YA fantasy author. I've published 2 books in 2022, and my next book's coming out in 2025. And I'm also a scientist in my day job. So right now I work as a science writer, but I used to be a postdoc. Um, and I used to do research in oceanography and then later on health science. But this is probably the most you're going to hear about me in this panel because I have 4 lovely panelists who I hope will be taking up most of the conversation today. So before we really get into it, I'm going to give everybody a second to introduce themselves. And I'm just going to go in the order that I see on my screen. So can we, Jessica, could you introduce yourself first?
Sure. I'm Jessica Connolly. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fantasy writer. That's what I signed with my agent for. Unclassifiable, whether it's YA or new adult, and they don't know where to do it. And the panel on uncategorizable genres was very relevant to me. The reason I'm here, though, is my nonfiction writing, where I simplify and de-scary business for creatives, meaning writers, artists, and musicians. And I focus on how to do our jobs in an energetically sustainable way and a mentally healthy way, because I do think you can be happy and mentally healthy as a creative individual. And that's what I help my clients with. Visually, I'm a pasty white woman with straight hair. It looks blonde to me, but people tell me it's red. And I'm in a hotel room in Pasadena, getting ready to head back to Kansas City after this panel. So thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And Jean?
Hi, I'm Jean Cavellos, she, her. I'm sitting in my office at home with an Odyssey Writing Workshop sign over my shoulder and a very messy bookcase with a Hello Kitty calendar on it. Visible in the background, I have dark hair and small eyeglasses and a headset on. I was a senior editor at Bantam Doubleday Dell for 8 years, where I ran the Horror Abyss program and the science fiction and fantasy program. I left to do my own writing, and I have 7 books out of science fiction and science nonfiction. I also love working with writers, so I founded the Odyssey Writing Workshops Charitable Trust about 29 years ago, where I run different workshops and classes for writers. And we started our new program in 2022 called Your Personal Odyssey Writing Workshop, which is a one-on-one intensive online workshop for writers who want to really seriously and intensely improve. We've also got lots of free resources for writers, including podcast, blog, writing tips, and a monthly discussion salon that anybody can attend. So that keeps me pretty busy, and you can find out more at odysseyworkshop.org.
Thanks so much, Jean. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm John Post. I'm a writer of adult fantasy fiction. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas. I've had fiction published in Daily Science Fiction, among other publications, 3-time honorable mention in the Writers of the Future contest. Really excited to be here. This is a topic that resonates a lot with me personally because my definition of success has certainly had to change a lot over the years of my writing career, which I'll talk some more about, I'm sure, during the questions. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And I'm also, this is apropos of nothing, but I'm a competitive checkers player. I don't think there's many people who can tote that title. But that's something that is influencing some of the fiction I'm writing currently in my space. So thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Adina.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adina Mignona, she, her. I guess I'll take care of the visual stuff first. I'm a female with long hair, white, and I chose to use my fun Zoom background, which is a fun starship with my surrounded by my books. I'm a science fiction author, at least in early morning and sometimes in the evenings. But by day, I'm an aerospace engineer. And so the space industry and having worked in the space industry for the last 30-ish years have motivated me or inspired me to write science fiction, which is what got me into the aerospace industry to begin with. So to me, it's a whole big circular thing that I like to keep on going. I'm 5 novels in, and I've published a couple short stories in publications no one's ever heard of years ago, but I do have a short story coming out in the Star Trek Explorers magazine in a few months. So I think I'm officially a Star Trek tie-in author as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And I think that many of you touched on this a little bit in your introductions, but since obviously one of the most difficult things about figuring out a time management strategy is finding something that works for you, obviously a lot of the answers that you give today are going to be tied to your own context and to your own particular sets of struggles. So I thought before we really get into it, could you, to the extent that you feel comfortable, could you share a little bit about what challenges you personally are dealing with when it comes to finding time to write? And I think for this one, we'll go in the same order, but for all future questions, whoever wants to answer can just answer.
Personal challenges for finding time to write for me. So I think what's interesting is I have learned that the challenges change very much depending on what's going on in my life when, and learning to be adaptable and accept my limitations at different points in time. So prior to this year, I had taken 2 years off completely to take care of my mom. And so I don't regret that time at all, but my definition of successful writing during that time actually was no writing, because I was really concerned about self-care. And so if any writing happened, it was really nice. So this year, when I was getting back into it, I was so out of practice. My body didn't even know how to sit in the chair anymore. And it was just a matter of starting very, very slow for me. And so for me, my particular challenges right now are I do write nonfiction and I write fiction, and I've been out of it for so long that I feel like a totally different person, because my life has changed so much in the past couple of years with personal experiences I've gone through. So it's kind of like I have to get to know myself all over again. And the nicest thing I've done for myself is say, okay, I'm going to try what's worked for me in the past and accept that it may not work for me any longer. And then I'm going to go out and try things that I hear other people doing and see if that works now. And if it does work, great, I keep it. And if it doesn't work, I just let it go. And there's no pressure on myself to adhere to how successful writing patterns may have worked in the past, because my life is different than it was before. So I had to accept that and adapt and change how I do it now.
Well, for me, running Odyssey takes a huge amount of time. As I mentioned, we started this new program, Your Personal Odyssey, a couple of years ago, where we, instead of holding one workshop over 6 weeks in the summer, we hold several online sessions over the year of different lengths. So then a writer can choose how long they want to complete the program. That just means all year is filled with intense work. So that's more of a challenge. Whoever had that idea, and we don't need to name names because it's me, could have thought that out a little bit more. Anyway, what Jessica said really resonates with me, because over the past year, I've been caring for my ill mom. And so that has also been a huge challenge in trying to keep up any sort of writing during that time.
Yeah, and I have 2 young children, so my time is very much at a premium in addition to a full-time job. So it's a lot of, I would say my process right now is more chaotic than I'd like for it to be. But it's really just a matter of trying to find the time where I can. Sometimes I do that writing in the morning before they get up. Sometimes it's after they go to bed. Sometimes it's on lunch break at work. So I just kind of piecemeal and put that together however I can. In terms of, meeting my goals, one of the, I'm 37 years old. And from pretty much age 18 to 35, I wrote almost every day of my life and had almost nothing to show for it because I was dealing with, I didn't realize this until much later, but really ADHD that was causing me to have problems meeting my goals and struggling. And I was the type of person that like every January 1st, I'd sit down and make all these goals for my year about and it was really more of like wish casting about what I wanted out of that year as opposed to what was realistic. And so I'm here to say, like, I think this panel is certainly important, but I want to also offer the counterpoint of don't let your goals also, like, not meeting your goals, like, make you miserable, because it did for me. And I think it set up for me, I'm more of a Taoist now, so I'm more of like go with the flow and try to be inner peace. And so really I try to set intentions. I think we're talking more about what our goals look like in future questions, but I've really just had to kind of reframe first off goal setting in general, and then also, you know, what that success means to me.
Yeah. So I guess I'm a little bit closer to John's situation in the fact that I also have young kids in addition to a full-time demanding day job. So my time is precious. Like every minute, every hour is very precious. Now, I've wanted to write since I was in high school or college. I don't know when I really wanted to do it, but I've been doing it since then. And I remember spending my 20s thinking that, like, okay, great. I'm going to go to work my day job, come home, and then write. And this was before I had kids. I didn't have my first kid until I was 36, and I'm about to be 50 now. And so during that whole time, during my 20s, I would get nothing done. I would come home, I'd have some dinner, I'd sit in front of the computer, and like nothing would happen. And night after night, and I'd be incredibly frustrated by this. It wasn't until I was about 30 years old, and to keep the story not too long, I'll just say I figured out that I was too tired after the long day job to write in the evening. So that's when I learned I need to write in the morning before work, before the day starts. And there was a lot of on and offs through my 30s to kind of really get things into a habit. But now for the last several years, I've really been in the habit where I tell everyone Monday through Friday from 5 to 6:15 a.m. I'm at my computer. It is my time to write. No one is to bother me, and generally no one does. When my youngest son, who's currently 5.5, was a little younger, it could have been, it was a little hard to, reliably do that, but I still got through. And then I use any other free time I have in the evenings, weekends to do things that don't require the same cognitive-ishness. So that's when I'll do some marketing or other stuff. But for me, so is really finding how I can work it all into my life, because to me, this is one of the most important things that I'm doing, just because it is. I have stories to tell. I'm about to be 50. I have 5 books out, and I have like 30 more stacked in my brain, just ready to go. So I'm motivated. I know how to get things done for myself, and there we are.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's great that we have a group of people with some similarities, but also have differences in what's going on with your life right now, because I think that something will resonate with the audience listening. So I think I was going to ask about what your process looks like, but we've heard a little bit from some of you about that. So I think I'm going to kind of merge 2 questions into one. If you could describe a little bit about what your process looks like, how you set goals, and how you keep yourself motivated enough to follow them, that would be really great. And if you can also, if you have any tips for people who might be in similar situations as you, who want to start a project or who want to start writing, is there something that you learned over time that you think would be really helpful for them, like you wish someone had told you earlier? And I think whoever wants to take this first can just jump in.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind, because it continues a little bit from what I was just saying. So now, like I said, so in the last couple of years, I've managed to get 5 books out, and I'll say that both of them, the series and then the standalone book, they both started from NaNoWriMo projects, oddly enough. So I big vote up for NaNoWriMo and participating in National Novel Writing Month, because that really helps you just get content out there. Now, from when I started these individual projects to getting them out, there were definitely several years that passed. So it isn't like NaNoWriMo in the next month, it's a produced book. It's NaNoWriMo to get a pile of content without thinking about it and then do something with it. And to me, that is still one of the biggest tips I wind up giving people is you really have to, if you want to be a writer, the only thing you actually have to do is write. Like almost everything else is optional, can be done in any order. There's like a whole bunch of other maybes, possiblies, depending on your situation. But the main thing you have to do is write, and you just have to figure out how to get writing into your life, whether it is a strict habit like I have, whether you can find it, ad hoc ways to write throughout the day, throughout the week. You have to be writing.
I want to piggyback on that because NaNoWriMo does not work for me at all. And I appreciate the people who can set their goals according to word count and time constraints. But for me particularly, that's very anxiety inducing. And so when I first started out, and it's been 15 years that I've been like serious about writing, there was you have to write every day, you have to do NaNoWriMo. And I tried all of these things. And what I found was those types of goals were setting me up for failure because I am not specifically a very high word count fast writer. And also I'm a merciless editor. I have an editing background. And so for me, a writing session could very well end up in a decreased word count. And so if I set my goal as 500 words a day, I'm failing every time I cut words, even though I made the book better. So what I learned for me is I do better by tracking my goals by time tracking, in the sense that I want to get in, 5 days a week. I do give myself the weekends off. I want to get writing time in. For me, new words is helpful. I do handwrite when I'm beginning on fiction projects, like when I'm world building and everything. I'm a huge handwriter. And then the next step of that for me is just transcribing the very poorly written, like, oh my God, how is this even, like, what is that word, And as I'm transcribing, then I automatically start making it better because it's so different. And so for my goal setting, my goals every day are read, write, meditate, and exercise. Because if I do those 4 things, I know that I will be functioning as a human better. And my writing is better when I'm reading. My writing is also better when I'm meditating, because what happens is writers and creatives, we have such ideaphoric brains. They run so fast all of the time. And so for me, meditation is a way where I learn to filter out other people. And then exercise turned out to be really important for me too. I started doing it when I turned 30 because I was like, oh, my metabolism's going to give out. But then what I understood was, oh my gosh, this is helping me manage depression, anxiety, so many other things. And so I started for vanity's sake, I would say, but I am now like a devotee because of mental health's sake. And so to me, my goals are not all writing specific about words on the page. My goals are about my life as a whole. And if I can get all 4 of those things, it's a gold star day. If I can get 3, then I know it's not a bad day. But if I only get 1 or 2, and for multiple days in a row, if I'm only at 1 or 2 of those things, I know I'm going to start on a bad mental spiral. And it's time for me to be like, oh, okay, how can I start taking care of myself again? And I'm probably doing too much for other people at that point in time.
Yeah, I second pretty much everything you said, Jessica. I mean, especially for me, that's actually something I had in my notes is I have 3 goals, and it's exercise, read, and write. And if your time, if you're on a time crunch, like, well, pretty much everybody is, but if you are struggled for time and trying to find time to be able to write or read, one thing that's been really transformational for me is audiobooks and listening to them while I go on walks. So I got an Apple Watch, and I'm obsessed with meeting my move goal. I feel like I'm like that from that David Sedaris essay he wrote about having like 20,000 steps each day, picking up trash in England. But and so that really knocks 2 off my list, right? I'm able to get some exercise, and I'm also able to listen to audiobooks. And that was an acquired taste for me. Some people may say, may not resonate with audiobooks. I would say if you make sure you give it a full chance. And it also varies from, audiobook to audiobook in terms of the reader. On the writing side, Google Docs has been really helpful for me, especially because I can put it on my phone. And if you think about how much time we all spend on our phones doom scrolling or doing things that aren't necessarily efficient, then, you know, you could really turn a lot of that time into writing. Now that also goes back to how much you can focus in different spaces. But, you know, if you're in a waiting room, you know, things like that, there's a lot of places you could find time to write throughout your day that, you know, you may not have thought is possible. The other piece about that, that's a lot easier during like a concept draft phase, when you're just trying to get stuff on paper and you don't have to think super heavily about it. My experience is it gets much more thoughtful and much more deliberate and much more focus intensive the farther along you get in that drafting process. But for me, in terms of my specific goals, I mean, my intention is 1,000 words a day. That's what I try to do. That's what's realistic for me. I don't always meet that. If I get 5,000 words a week, I'm happy. But again, as was already said, you know, it's important to put in the work. I just don't hate yourself if you don't get it right. But at the end of the day, I just started querying my first novel, and I think that was when it was really eye-opening to me about like, okay, this is a numbers game. The more novels I write, the more I exponentially increase my chances of getting published. And so to do that, you do have to write every day, or not, you don't have to write every day, but you do have to write regularly. You know, if you're writing 1,000 words, well, just anything times 0 is 0. So if you know, anything you can put in, no matter what, is a step in the right direction.
So I have the goal to write every day, and I use a time goal because that allows me to have pre-writing activities like mind mapping, character development, world building, outlining, research, and all that, in which the word count can be variable. Maybe there's not a lot of words, but I'm figuring stuff out. I can draft with the same goal. I can revise with the same goal when it's very hard to keep track of word count in a revision. It's also more realistic for me because I only have so much time. So if I have a word goal and I can't meet the word goal in the time I have, then I would just have to abandon it and not meet the goal. Usually my time goal is very modest, so I can reach my goal almost all the time. And that's what I recommend. You want to be meeting your goal 99% of the time, so you feel good about it. You know, yeah, I met my goal. Yay, I can't wait to do this tomorrow. Instead of, I didn't meet my goal, I'm a failure, I want to give up. And then on many days, I exceed my goal. I work longer than the amount of time that I had set. And so then I can feel really good. I also have goals for studying the works of other writers, reading craft books and articles on writing, doing deep practice with writing exercises to strengthen my weak areas and learn new techniques, and researching markets and changes in publishing. So those are also valuable things to have in your goals. I think what I would recommend is, if you're able to write every day, it can be very effective because it keeps you thinking about what you're going to write the next day all night long. So it's kind of always in your head. If you can't write every day, that's okay. Figure out what days you can write, and then you can look forward to with either excitement or dread about what you're going to write on the next day. So at least you're thinking about it and it's kind of working in the back of your mind. Setting small goals can be a great thing and can help you through times of trouble when you feel like you can't write much. You could set a goal of writing 100 words a day, or I know writers who have even set goals of just writing a sentence a day. And you can always build up. If you're successful at writing a sentence a day or more for a month, you can raise it to 2 sentences, or you can raise it more. Or maybe it's 5 minutes a day if things are really tough, which is kind of where it's been for me over this past year with my mom. If there's a particular time of day when you can consistently write, that's more helpful than just sort of moving the time around, because your body gets used to it, your mind gets used to it, and you're kind of ready to go when you sit down at that time. And you can also, I think, as Jessica said, tell all your friends to leave you alone during that time. If you feel like you're succumbing to distractions, you can use things like an internet blocker. to avoid going online. If you feel like you need to research something, maybe you just put brackets in your manuscript and say, I need to research this later, and do that in a separate session. If you feel like you need kind of motivation, I know a lot of writers who do things to motivate themselves or reward themselves. So I know writers who pay themselves by the word, like $10 for every 1,000 words they write, maybe with a bonus for finishing a story and sending it out for the first time. Put the money in a jar, they can see the jar, they spend the money on things they would never buy for themselves normally. So it's like a treat. Another author I know burns tea candles, those tiny little candles, while she's writing, and she has figured out that each candle burns for 5 hours. So to do 10,000 hours of deep practice, she needs to burn through 2,000 candles. She bought them all, and she has worked down, and she's almost to the very last candle. And it's very motivating for her to see that. Other people like to use the Seinfeld chain, where you make a big X on your calendar on the days that you write, and you want to have your whole calendar filled up with X's, and it's just like a horrible thing if you have a blank space there. So if that appeals to you, that can work. Other people have accountability partners where they report every day or every writing day on what they've done, so that somebody else knows, and you know you're going to have to tell them, so that can help too.
Great, thanks. I second what Jean said about small goals. I just really quickly, I find I'm the person who it's much harder, much harder for me to convince myself to sit down and start than it is for me to convince myself to continue. So if I trick myself into telling myself I'm only here for 100 words, more often than not, I will stick to it and actually write a lot more. So we have a question from the audience. Elizabeth asks, a few people said their main goals are read, write, and exercise. So do you have any tips for how to do that and work and keep up with the rest of your life and still have the energy to write well?
Yep. I mean, this is for me. I know this is the reason I do write at the first thing in my day, is so at least I've gotten that done for the day. The second thing is a lot of these things, at least in my life, are scheduled where I don't have control really of the schedule. You know, my day job is a fairly straightforward 9 to 5-ish job. So I have to do things around it. And I have kids and they have activities around it. And while I didn't mention exercise on the initial through the questions, it's a pretty important thing in my life too. I don't consider it, to me, it's separate from anything writing related. I don't mush it all together. But it's still, since I'm turning 50 this year, I realize I really have to work on strength training. I hate it. So, but I am forcing myself to go to the gym 3 times a week to meet with a trainer to keep me accountable. But those are scheduled. So it's really, and it's recognizing that at some point, something does have to give. I can't do everything. And, you know, what are the important things in your life? For me, writing is one of the top most important things. There's taking care of my kids, my job, which takes care of the house, and then writing. So other things that I want to do, like gardening, I haven't really gardened in a couple of years. My garden's a disaster. You know, like something is gonna give at some point, and it's okay to make choices, and it's okay for those choices to change year to year or throughout the year, depending on what your own priorities are. But then for me, then scheduling, knowing what my schedule is, knowing what the week ahead looks like, what the month ahead looks like, helps me get the things done that are important to me. And chores. And the nice thing about kids, when they get old enough to start doing some of the chores, they can also start doing some of the chores.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not there yet, but we're training them. We're getting close. Yeah, second on that. I mean, I think writing for me, if I could write in the morning, every single morning, I would do that. It's been so hard right at this point in my life to find consistency because my kids' sleep schedules will just completely change with the time changes, with the seasons. So I would say the idea of me coming home at night after work, after getting the kids in bed and having to write is exhausting, and that's not the time that I would like to do it. So I think, yeah, prioritizing is important. If you can write in the morning, try to get in a consistent sleep routine where you could get up at 5 or 6 or whatever time you need to get up to be able to do your writing then, or at least some of it then, because it's a lot easier to do some later in the day if you've already started. And then same thing as I said earlier for the other things about, I think audiobooks, trying to go on walks or even just exercise in general while you listen to audiobooks. And then utilizing, if you can, Google Docs or some other app that would be able to interface between a smartphone and a computer.
I think it's really good to, I guess I can say this because we're at SIFWA, is to treat yourself like you're experimenting. So change variables, see what the best result comes from. Many writers that I've worked with resist the idea of getting up early and writing. But then when they try to write later in the day, they often find that they get interrupted, or they're too tired, or something else, and they don't do very well with it. And I think from all that I've gathered from writers that I have heard from or read about, there's a much higher percentage of writers who have succeeded by writing early in the morning than writing later in the day. That doesn't mean you can't write later in the day, but I'm just saying maybe try some different times and see what gets better results.
For me, it's all about you knowing yourself. So like I am innately a night person. My mom worked nights, so I will flip my days and my nights automatically. And so I have historically been a night writer, but there are times in my life, like when I worked in corporate, where that wasn't always working for me, right? What I do now is I actually look at my weeks. So what I do is on Sunday is I look at my week and I look at absolutely everything that I have and I go through and I put in my priorities for the week. And so you're always going to have some external accountability things. And also knowing whether you're the type of person who does better with external accountability, or if you're the type who's really good at internal accountability. If you need external accountability, co-writing sessions are fantastic because somebody else is going to show up. And so I set those up with my clients and we run them 4 times a week, where for 2 hours at a stretch, you'll log on and other people are co-writing with you. And they're not like nagging you or anything. It's just the fact that you have a space you can show up and someone is expecting you there and someone is expecting you to do what you said you were going to do. Also for like exercise, I do better with external accountability on exercise. So I pay somebody to yell at me for an hour a couple of times a week. And what's really nice about it is I don't have to think at all. Like she's like, move your leg, I move my leg. And it's really, really nice to turn your brain off and have somebody do that. If you're the type of person who money is like a big factor for you, if you hate spending money on things that you aren't going to use, then maybe invest in a workshop or something like that, because you need to know what your personal motivations are. And then you tap into those specifically. And that's how you like rig the system for it to work for you. And I do know like, I have a lot of client work, or I still do a little bit of developmental editing for people and those type of things. And so there are some times when I'm under deadline where I have to say, okay, I still have to pay my bills. So my personal writing is only going to get 5 or 10 minutes today. And that's all it's going to get. But if I still touch it and I do something for myself, that is enough. And then I know that in another season, like I'll have more time for writing when I don't have an editorial client. And like a lot of my clients are teachers, right? And so for them to expect to write the same way in the summer that they do during the school year is not realistic. So looking not just at the week, how it looks, but at the seasonality of your life. Like when you have young kids, your life looks very different than when you're older. So maybe it's not realistic to think of like, during Christmas break, you're probably not going to get anything done, right? Like, and so don't put the pressure on yourself to perform if that time of your life is not conducive to it. Accept that you're human first and foremost. You're here to make connections with people. You're here to live your life. Do the best you can, but allow for flexibility because that's what you need as a human.
Thanks so much. I also do agree with writing in the morning. I'm a very reluctant morning writer because I am not a morning person by nature. But lately, recently I got a job where I have a long commute and I take the bus. And so I got a tiny little laptop and I'm trapped on that bus for 40 minutes anyway. So I might as well sit and write while I'm there. And bonus, it has no internet connection, so I can't possibly be distracted by anything.
Oh, that was
And that has
been Jean, you'd mentioned internet blockers. If you really have an internet problem, unplug your router or have somebody change the password on you and not give you the password until whatever you want done is done.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have one more question from the audience. So Michelle asks, how do you approach working on multiple projects at once? For example, if you have to edit one book while drafting a new one, or working simultaneously on a novel and shorter works.
I don't mind going first again if someone else.
Go ahead, Adina.
Well, so that's where I am right now. I at any given time have multiple projects going on, and I think I've just gotten into a mode where I've kind of figured out how I need to accomplish each part, including the tools and the times. So like drafting new stuff to me happens that's what I'm doing when I say I'm writing in the morning. That to me is I'm drafting new stuff. I'm not doing anything else during those sessions. I'm not working on outlining, working on editing, because to me those are the things I can do other times where I can fit them in. So I've learned how to set up outlines for myself. I started out this whole journey as a pantser, and then after writing a couple pantsed novels that were terrible and like the worst, I realized I needed, at least for myself, a minimal outline. And the problem that I have the squirrel problem. Like, I'll be in the middle of a project, I'll think of an idea and want to like devote my attention. So I've been able to set up, so the tool that I use, the tool itself is not important, finding what works for you is, but I use Evernote. So I have how I set up projects for possible like things, and I kind of have a sequence of events where something goes from like credible idea to I'm outlining it to I'm drafting it, and then after it's drafted I have a process where I'm going back, I do some editing, and then I outsource the rest of my editing. And especially when something is being outsourced edited, I'm drafting new stuff. So during a normal week, my morning, Monday through Friday, I'm writing. But then like on the weekends or evenings, I'm doing any of these other pieces. Like this morning, I was working on an outline of actually a nonfiction book that I'm going to be writing. And I was solidifying that outline. And then that's going to shortly move into the process where I'm writing that core material. So a lot of this was trial and error and just figuring out what worked for me over the years and figuring out like what tools. John had made mention of like tools that sync between devices easily. So I don't do a lot of writing on my phone, but I do a lot of note taking on my phone. And I like to have my notes accessible because I might think of things wherever I am. So I do like that idea that you have applications that do sync seamlessly between desktops and tablets or phones. And like I said, a lot of this was trial and error for what worked for me.
For me,
And Jessica, you.
This is definitely because I write nonfiction and I write fiction both on a regular basis. And so there's this context shifting where you're in a whole different brain space, right? When I'm writing nonfiction versus where I'm world building and fantasy. Also, when I'm editing and when I'm coaching, those are very different things. I don't live in a large place. I live in a 1,200 square foot place. I don't have my own office. But what I do have is I have different zones of the house. So like I will edit on the couch. So my body is like conditioned to be like, we are in editing mode when we're here. I do coaching calls in this one specific chair in my house. I draft by hand in a different chair in the house. And so hacking according to like your human biology and like the conditioning of it, you can condition yourself to kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm in fiction mode when I'm in my bedroom. I'm in nonfiction mode when I'm in my living room or wherever it is that you have to go. So that's one of the things. The other ways I allow for context shifting is if I do have to be working on them both simultaneously, like I'm under deadline for something, or I have, like nonfiction and fiction or editing, whatever, is I'll try and break up my day with natural breaks for the context shift. So what I mean is like, if I'm drafting in the morning, I know I'm going to eat lunch, right? And while I'm going to eat lunch, I'm going to have some time to zone out and kind of chill and watch like a cooking show or something completely mindless and garbagey, right? That gives my brain enough time to switch gears. And then after lunch, I'm like, okay, now I'm in business mode and we're going into this mode. And that's generally how I structure my days, like creative work in the morning and then business work in the afternoon. But allowing for natural resets for you. And a lot of resets are like taking a shower, going on a walk, a commute home from work, eating a meal, anything that physically grounds you in your body typically will let your brain do a context switch a little bit faster. So if you have to be doing multiple things simultaneously in the same day, try and build in just a natural context shift, and it's going to make that transition easier for you.
I would just add that you want to find the rhythm that works for you. That some people will work on one project until they reach a point where either their enthusiasm is fading, or they're not sure what's going to happen next, or they're feeling like they need to give something more thought before they're ready to proceed, and then they switch to the other project. So that could be, days or weeks or whatever. Other people, like as has been described, kind of working on each project each writing day, so that you are spending several hours working on one thing, taking a break, and then spending several hours working on the other thing. I do think it's good if those projects are at different stages, so you're not drafting two things at the same time. That may work for some people, but I think more often it works better if you're like drafting one thing and revising another thing, or pre-writing one thing and drafting another thing. So those are just some ideas to keep in mind.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. One more audience question. Does anyone have any thoughts about dealing with anxiety avoidance or shame avoidance around goals? So for example, even just setting the goal triggers a negative emotion because you're worried this one will fail too.
Well, if I can take this one first, because
Yeah, absolutely.
this hits home a lot to me, and I think meditation was really, I mean, I don't mean to completely divert this away from the conversation about writing, but I think there's the philosophy behind this, like getting into meditation and Buddhist meditation and sitting with your thoughts and realizing that you are not your thoughts, first off, is, I think, important. And that was super key to me, is just going through, and I meditate probably 3 to 4 times a week. Again, I try to do it every day, but I have to look at what's priorities, and that is a priority, but writing sometimes takes precedent. But I think one thing is, like, you don't associate yourself with your thoughts, and let yourself think those thoughts, and don't hate yourself for thinking them. You can, I mean, meditation really at its core is sitting down and just being aware of your thoughts, and realizing that, one thing that was really eye-opening to me is when you sit down and you realize just how many thoughts are constantly running through your head, and that you do not control any of them, and the way that they make your body feel. So that's number one. Number two, about these specific goals. So that's my meditation answer. But I also think that with your goals themselves, just practice some self-love, give yourself a break. And the change from goals to intentions was key to me. And the fact that, I set intentions at the beginning of the year that I wanted to, have these 2 books ready to, query by the end of 2 manuscripts ready by the end of this calendar year. And I may not get all the way there, but even if I get to where one is completed and half of another one is completed, I mean, that's still a success. I mean, you still wrote a book and a half of another book. And so, like, I think looking at it through the lens of this binary pass fail, success fail lens was really damaging for me. And just looking at it again through celebrate your accomplishments, practice self-love, and just make sure that you're still, I think discipline is probably the most important thing to making it as a writer, just from what I've seen with other people and my personal experience. But I also think you have to, there's going to be times where that doesn't happen and you aren't able to do it as often as you want to, and that's okay.
And I also obviously am a meditator, but I came to it, I thought it was a load of crap, right? Like I went to a writer's retreat and they're like, we're gonna meditate. And I'm like, damn it, we're gonna be sitting here like, and like, what is this nonsense? But the teacher was Heather Demetrius, and what she said is, hey, when you're writing, You know how you have to keep redirecting your attention, and like your kids come in and you're like, oh, I need to get back in the story, refocus. She's like, you know what meditation is? It's practicing refocusing over and over and over again. And the better you can get at refocusing, then the more you can get into your draft. And I was like, damn it, she has the point. And so then I started meditating at that retreat, and I started small, just like 30 seconds up to 5 minutes over the course of a month. Now that's the one thing that I would say I don't miss any, like I do that daily. So I am a huge proponent of meditation, but to be more granular, there's a book called Tiny Habits, and I'm trained in it for coaching. But what I love about it, and this is how I got back to writing after my mom died, right? So I was emotionally just wrecked. I didn't know how to get back to the computer at all. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to tiny habit it. And this is what I always do with my clients who are in emotionally very volatile spaces. And what a tiny habit means is you look at the minuscule steps to get you to do it. So the first day of where I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back to writing again, all I had to do was sit down at my desk and turn on my computer. That was the only goal I set for myself. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And then I did it. And then the next day it was like, okay, I'm going to open a Word document. That's all I have to do is open a Word document of something I've written before. And you can't open a Word document and not read it, right? Like you're going to read it. So then you start reading it. And so then I sat in the chair a little bit longer. Then, because I'm a time goal writer, I was like, okay, I'm going to start building up time. And I started with 5 minutes. And I was like, all I have to do is open my computer, turn it on, open a Word document, and sit at my desk for 5 minutes. And I would start reading, and then I'd be like, well, that word was stupid. Why did I put that word there? You know, and I would change it out. Every day I would add a minute. So 6 minutes was the goal, 7 minutes. Some days I'd get to 7 minutes and be like, I'm out, like this is enough. But more often than not, what happened was I was like, I was there and I went longer. And then that was what Jean was talking about. Like you set your goals small so that you can meet them. So then what happened is I was building up my time, but I would still have like, you know, grief is like a tidal wave, right? It just hits you and you don't know when it's going to happen and whatever. So I was like, okay, what do I need? What's my number for me to feel like I've written today and I can still say I'm a writer? Like, what's my time number? And so I experimented with that. And for me, it was 8 minutes. And I was like, if I can get 8 minutes in front of the computer of focused attention, and that's all I can do, that's enough. And that's enough for me to put a sticker on my calendar, because the celebrating yourself and like seeing your progress is really important. And I love stickers. I've always loved stickers. And so when I write, I give myself a sticker on the calendar. And for me, it was 8 minutes. So I had a lot of avoidance. I had a lot of anxiety at that particular time in my life, and breaking it down to like the most minuscule goals. And whatever you think is small enough, it's not. Go like 2 steps smaller. Like you want to back it up 2 steps smaller. And the book is called Tiny Habits. I don't remember who wrote it. But if you want to read something on it, that's a methodology that works for me and a lot of my clients when they're in an emotional space and they're trying to get back into it.
Yeah.
I love what
oh,
everybody's saying. I would just add quickly that sometimes writers who are having a hard time writing find it much easier to do some sort of writing exercise or follow a writing prompt or do free writing, rather than like trying to start a new project or even trying to pick up an old project. Because if it's just like a writing exercise, it's only going to take a few minutes. There's no pressure on it. Like this is not something you're going to have published, or you're just trying out a technique. You're finding some exercise out of a book or online and trying out what it says. And it can be something very simple and then very low pressure. So that might be a thing to try.
Yeah. And I think the thing I would add is that you're under no obligation to set goals at all. I mean, if you want to be a writer, you just write. There's no goals are necessary. Now, if you want to be a published author or writer, at some point you have to finish stuff. And even still, you don't necessarily need a goal. You just need a definition of done. You just need to know how do you know when you're done with the particular thing. And breaking a project down that way, it's different than breaking it down, you know, from a goal perspective. It might be breaking it down piece by piece. Like I'm writing a paragraph today. You don't say it's my goal. It's just that's what I'm doing. That's the task. And that might feel better than goals. It depends on you and how you feel about those things. But you are under no obligation to set any kind of goals.
And I do want to mention something that's hugely important is your support system and who you are sharing your goals with. Because what I find is a lot of times early writers who don't have a writer support system are sharing their goals with the wrong people. And these are people who are unconsciously our dream assassins, right? These are the people who are not in the industry and they don't understand what it is. And so and a lot of times subconsciously, the reason we're going to them is because writing is a way that we are growing, expanding, and changing. And subconsciously, we're trying to keep ourselves the same. So we share with people who we know who are going to be like, that's never going to work. What are you thinking? How dare you think you could possibly leave a corporate job and go write? You know, sometimes you need to look at who you're sharing with, because you have a better support system than the people who are just continually knocking you down and saying no. And I'm not talking about like a rah, blow smoke up your ass type of support system. Like, you can have a genuine support system who will give you honest feedback, but can still be constructive and supportive at the same time. And most likely those are going to be other writers. They are not going to be people who are in non-creative industries.
Thanks. So 2 things. The first, I looked it up and it's Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, PhD, Fogg with 2 G's. And I'm just going to throw that in the chat so that if anybody wants to look up the book, you have something to Google. The second is, in the spirit of time management, we've burned through 50 minutes somehow. So thank you so much, everyone, for your answers, and thank you for the audience for being so active and giving us so many thoughtful questions. But I really wanted to give us time to tell people what you're working on next and where we can find you after this. So I think we're going to start with Jean and move our way through the panel, just so that everybody has enough time to tell the audience where we can find them, where they can find them.
Okay, I'm currently working on a novel called Fatal Spiral, near future science thriller. You can find out more about me at jeancavellos.com. You can find out about Odyssey at odysseyworkshop.org. We've got social media accounts all over the place. Usually it's at Odyssey Workshop on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Insta, Threads, YouTube, all the places. And I try to post helpful posts about writing fairly often. So you might find some good resources there.
Thanks. And John?
Yeah, I'm currently working on my second adult fantasy novel. My first, Querying Agents. And I also have another one in queue that I've started working on in the past and I stopped. I'm going to resume. So hopefully within the next 12 months, I'll have 3 manuscripts that I'll be querying. In terms of social media, you can find me on Twitter at John T. Post. I do not update very often, but yeah, that's where you can find me. Thank you.
Okay. Adina?
Okay, there's a lot. You can find me basically at adinam.com. That's my website, and through there you can find all the other things. I'm most active on Facebook and LinkedIn. Because I'm working in aerospace engineering, I post a lot on LinkedIn that kind of blend engineering and writing and creativity, and I'm very active there, especially for a lot of early career folks. And on Facebook, I talk about my writing, and I like to talk about all the real world sciencey stuff that happens that affects my writing, like stuff that's happening on the moon and in our solar system and such. I'm actively drafting the next set of books that follow on this series, the Robot Galaxy series. That's what I'm working on. So tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., I will be at my computer here working on the drafts of those. But I'm outlining. This was originally going to be a standalone novel, Lunar Logic, and then after it came out, some people encouraged me to write a sequel. So I'm outlining that and outlining a nonfiction book that is about engineering that I'll be drafting later this summer. And I also, like I said, I have short stories coming out. So look for me in Star Trek Explorers. Look for me at a couple conventions on the East Coast, Shore Leave at the end of July and Capclave at the end of September. And I think I covered everything. It's a lot.
Great. Thank you, Adina. Jessica?
I'm just finished sending a book proposal for nonfiction to my agent on creative energy, and it's about how our creative work is teaching us to be brave in other areas of our lives, and how it's leading us, our bravery and our creativity is leading us to our highest potential in all aspects of our lives. I'm hand drafting on a story called The Story Mad, about what happens when societies pour all of their pain into one individual and choose to offload, and they don't deal with their own pain. You can find me on jessicaconnolly.com, and then on Instagram, I'm at the CE Coaches, as in the Creative Energy Coaches. I do at the Jessica Connolly website, if you go to the coaching tab, I do free one-on-one sessions. So if anybody wants to talk things through, you're welcome to book on through there. And thanks for having us so much. And you've done a great job moderating. So thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you so much. And if you want to find me, my website is eabonin.com. So my initials and my last name. Bonin has 3 M's, and I'll make things easy for you and put it in the chat in a second. You can also find me on Twitter infrequently at EAB Writes. So my initials and Writes. You can find me on Instagram at elisa.a.bonin. And I do also have a link tree. And I think I'll just go ahead and type that in here so that it's easy to find me. I've published 2 books that you can find. So Dauntless is already out. That came out in 2022. Stolen City came out in 2022 as well. Both are YA fantasy. My next book comes out in March next year. It's called Lovely, Dark, and Deep, and it's another YA fantasy about a secret magic school off the coast of Washington State. Thank you, everybody. You've been a fantastic panel. I think we have about 4 minutes left. So maybe if everybody could share just one sentence, what do you think is the most important thing that you want somebody who's maybe struggling a little to take away from this panel?
I want people to know that your creative work is needed. If there's a reason that you want to write it, somebody else needs it, and it's going to unlock something in them. And your last obligation is to put that work out to a place where they can connect with it, because your work is needed and it will change people's lives.
I guess I would say that it's important to write down what excites you about the work that you're embarking upon. That can be a great way to focus on what you're trying to achieve, and also to remind yourself later on when you're in the weeds and you've lost track of why the heck you were doing this, to go back and look at that, and it can be inspirational.
Say, no matter how, when, where, you need to be writing to be a writer. And so it's going to, whichever way it works out for you is the way that is correct for you, but write, just write.
And probably what I would say, and I don't know if we've touched on this exactly, but, measure success by the things you can control, not the things that you can't, because you're going to be writing drafts that you're going to query to agents you're going to get probably a lot of rejections, and you can't control that, but you can control how much you write and the quality of what you write.
And I'm just going to say, find the process that works for you. Don't worry about being just like everybody else around you. Find what works best for you, for your own unique writing style, and for your own set of circumstances, and for your own brain chemistry, and go with that. So thank you. I think we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for being here with us. You've been a great audience, and thank you again to our panelists for their really insightful answers to these questions. And thanks so much to the SFWA moderators for keeping us on track and for putting all of this together.